Hey everyone, I am exhausted. The Season 4 Invitational was last weekend, and despite it being relatively local, it was about 20 minutes away from me, I'm just so tired. It was a long weekend, a lot of magic. It was fantastic, a ton of fun, and today I'm going to be playing the standard deck that I played in the Invitational, although I changed a couple things. But it's not that big of a deal, just a few small tweaks here and there. But if you guys have been paying any attention whatsoever, you know that I've been playing this Abzan whip deck. And I did pretty well in the Open in Portland, undefeated in actual matches played, although I conceded to Brad Nelson in the top 4 to get him into the Players' Championship. And maybe he didn't need it, maybe he was a soft lock anyway, but I'm happy with my decision, I'm short a trophy, potentially, but no big deal. Just want to see my friend compete in that tournament, and that should be a lot of fun. So, basically, this is a green-black deck that you mill yourself a little bit. You play this longer game with Whip of Erebos, and instead of splashing Sidisi like a lot of people do, I totally understand that, it's like you're trying to mill yourself. You're trying to Whip of Erebos some Hornet Queens. Like, why wouldn't you want to mill yourself? Well, we got this guy, this Siege Rhino thing. This is a hell of a card. This thing lets you get really aggressive against the control decks, and it gives you a buffer against beatdown decks. And granted, Sidisi kind of does the same thing, where it lets you get aggressive, and is really good against beatdown because it creates, 2 creatures and like more creatures after that. But the buffer from Rhino and the effective haste that it has, because it has this ETB where it drains them for 3, is just so huge. And Sidisi is pretty easy to kill, whereas the Rhino is not. And the Rhino just keeps coming at them. It tramples. They can't chump it with like outburst tokens or anything. And the Rhino is basically just one of the best creatures of all time. So we got this guy, and obviously he's pretty good with Whip of Erebos too. Obviously Sidisi is too, but I'm playing with the Rhino. But I don't really fault anyone for playing the blue cards in the deck, because the blue cards are pretty good too, and there are things like Disdainful Stroke, Ashiok that are pretty good in the actual mirror matches. So, play some games, see what you're comfortable with, and decide your colors from there. But for me, it looks like I'm playing the Rhino and probably not slowing down anytime soon. So I have a cash tournament this weekend, and I'm going to be running this back, and I'm pretty excited. Like, I'm just very, very happy with this deck, and I'm excited to play it in some more tournaments. So should be a lot of fun. But the weird stuff with this deck, it's like you play Wayfinder, you play Caryatid, you play Courser, you play Rhino, you play some amount of Whips, Doomwake Giants, and Hornet Queens, and some removal. And then past that, it's like, well, we have some slots, so what do? Previous iterations had Fleecemane Lion as a blocker and a thing that you could attack with, and a thing that they kind of had to blow a removal spell on. And this one doesn't have it. I'm not sure if that's right or not. It's like it's felt not right to me, so I might go back to a version with a couple Lions or maybe even some Rakshasa Death Dealers. But we'll see. For things to fill out my deck, I have 2 Reclamation Sages, both for mirror matches and for against the Jeskai Ascendancy token deck that you played to a top 4 finish at Worlds, and that deck recently won the Invitational, so, that deck's pretty good too. I have a couple Thoughtseizes, and Thoughtseize is kind of weird in this deck. Like, I generally like Thoughtseize in decks that can play it turn 1 somewhat effortlessly, but this is certainly not one of those decks. And if you go like turn 1 tap land, turn 2 2-drop, and you have a Thoughtseize, it kind of messes you up because it's not on curve really at any point. So you kind of just have to use Thoughtseize whenever you can as a curve filler, which is sort of weird because we have the 8 ETB tap lands that are also doing that same sort of work. So you end up with like 10 of these curve filler type cards, and I think that's okay. It's a little on the high end, I think, because there are times where you just want to play like an untapped land and, use all of your mana to play a big spell, like whether it's a Siege Rhino, a Doomwake Giant, or whatever. So having too many ETB tap lands and Thoughtseizes might slow you down a little bit. And so you have to plan your turns ahead and figure out when exactly are you going to be using this Thoughtseize? Because sometimes, you might have to like take a turn off because it's like, well, if he plays a Siege Rhino here, I'm in big trouble, right? So you have to play a Thoughtseizes, a tap land, and then you have like a mana or two that's just unspent, and that's certainly not good, but, you just got to do whatever you got to do. But the format is in this weird spot where you can't just kill everything that they're doing. You can't just like have a bunch of heroes downfalls and it's like, oh, well, whatever they play, I'll just kill it, because there are things like Jeskai Ascendancy and Whip of Erebos that are just really tough to kill with normal cards. You can't downfall it, you can't Murderous Cut it. In the Invitational, I played 2 Utter Ends, and that was a mistake just because they're so clunky. I like the 1, and I have the 2 Reclamation Stages to blow up enchantments, but I think you need more than just like 3 things to kill their weirdo permanents. So I have a couple Thoughtseizes, plus Thoughtseize hedges against things like blue-black control, which is not a very good matchup. So I like some amount of Thoughtseizes. I would certainly not jam 4 into this deck, but I feel like 2 is a reasonable number. And again, this deck is kind of weird where you're like half a Reanimator deck and half of just like a mid-range Abzan deck. So there are certainly some games where you draw a bunch of high casting cost stuff that are virtual mulligans until the super late game. So if you draw like a Hornet Queen before turn 6, or a Doomwake Giant, or like multiples of these cards, it's like your hand doesn't have a whole lot of options. And once you Thoughtseize them once, like the second Thoughtseize after that is another one of those cards where it's like you might not want to use it because you're so low on life, or you might not want to use it because either you know their hand from something like Courser of Crewfix, or they just don't have a hand. So you can only afford to play so many of these cards with diminishing returns. So only have 2 Thoughtseizes, but I do have the 2 Sages and an Utter End to kill weirdo permanents. I cut the Commune with the Gods because despite Commune being a 2-mana spell that fills your graveyard, in reality what it does is fill your hand with more expensive casting cost spells. So, you'll play a Commune, and if you don't hit like a Courser or a Satyr Wayfinder, you're going to end up with like a Rhino, a Whip, a Doomwake Giant, a Hornet Queen. And that's good. That's certainly a reasonable card to be playing in your deck. But the issue is that like you already have a bunch of those cards in your deck, and it's already really dangerous for you to be drawing a bunch of them. So Commune is effectively this card that costs you 2 mana and does some stuff to make Whip of Erebos a little bit better. But at the end of it, you just end up with a bunch of expensive stuff. So I ended up cutting the Communes, and it makes the deck feel like the mana curve is lower, oddly enough. So because I cut the Communes, we only have 4 Satyr Wayfinders to mill ourselves. The Windswept Heaths help fill our graveyard a little bit, as do the Thoughtseizes. So I feel like we can still get away with 2 Murderous Cuts. 3 is kind of pushing it. I think you could play 3, but the reason we're playing Murderous Cut is because it's very cheap. It's like a 1-mana removal spell when it's at its best. But if you're paying like 3, 4, or even 5 mana, that is not a card you want in your deck. So again, diminishing returns. You don't want to draw a bunch of these cards, so you only play 2. So I have an extra Hero's Downfall, which is fine. It's not super easy to cast. I'm still playing the second Urborg, which I can understand not a lot of people wanting to do because it's legendary, but it really eases the mana cost for things like Hero's Downfall and Whip of Erebos, and you really want 1 per game, otherwise you end up taking a bunch of damage from your Llanowar Waste. So Hero's Downfall is fine. Answer Stormbreath Dragon, which is kind of a problem for this deck, and Ashiok, which is certainly a problem for this deck. Other than that, from my Portland list, I added a Doomwake Giant. It just seemed like there were more tokens, more whip decks, so that seemed like kind of a no-brainer. And then, because there were so many token and whip decks, I expected an influx of Doomwake Giants, so for the Invitational, I actually cut a Hornet Queen, and I think that might be right, but I want to try it with 3 again, just to see how it feels. And then the last card, boom, Eidolon of Blossoms. And you see this in green-black devotion lists, and they're more based on Constellation. They have like a bunch of Farika's main deck, they have Nykthos, all this stuff. And my plan for mirror matches was to just outdraw them with Eidolons. So I have 1 main, a couple more on the sideboard. I have a Johnny Mentor of Heroes to even find them. And basically what you do is you just keep running out things that they have to kill, or, that they really want to kill. And if they don't kill them, you just kind of take over the game with them. So Eidolon and a Johnny, very, very good mirror matches. I have this weirdo Temple of Silence because in a lot of the mid-range matchups I side out Caryatids, and once I do that I feel like I'm light on land, so I wanted an extra land in the board. Then past that we have another Utter End, which might not need to be here actually. This could maybe be like another Drown in Sorrow or Bile Blight, but I've been fine with my token matchup, and I haven't really felt the need for more of these effects, so I just have another Utter End. But that might mean that I have too many cards to bring in for mirror matches, so we're going to have to pay attention to that. And then I have another Reclamation Sage, which I think is pretty important. I think you want 3. I have a Furiko, which is certainly good against their Whip of Erebos, especially when you have Doomwake Giant to take out the snakes, but Furiko also combos well with the Eidolon, so it's another thing that plays into this sort of mini engine out of the sideboard. Then we have a couple Glare of Heresies, which are good against normal Abzan. Kill their Rhino, kill their Elspeth, maybe kill a Wingmate Rock if they're beating you down. Also very good against White-Blue Heroic, which did pretty well at the Invitational. And then I have another Thoughtseize, which is for mostly control Heroic. There are some mid-range matchups where I would bring this in, but again, the games go so long that you don't want to draw things like Sylvan Caryatid and Thoughtseize. You want things that affect the board. So even though Thoughtseize early game is really, really good, really powerful, you don't want to draw a bunch of them as the game goes on. So that's it. That's the deck. Mana base, people have done a bunch of different things with the mana base, but I like the one that I've been playing, so, you know, whatever. But yeah, that's it. I like the deck a lot, and I'm pretty happy to be playing with this deck. It feels like it's in a nice spot. It's pretty powerful. It's got like the late game engine going on, and I'm gonna play it this weekend for sure. And then maybe I'll go to GP Denver, maybe some opens. You know, kind of got the itch. Kind of want to battle. So let's get to it.